They say architecture is frozen music. If that's true, then I spent 15 years composing a symphony, only to have someone else claim to be the conductor. My name is Marcus Foster, and this is the story of how I lost everything I built, and how the very principles that my partner ridiculed became the key to the greatest project in our city's history. I still remember the day I first met David Reynolds. It was during a city planning meeting where I'd presented my vision for sustainable urban development. While others saw just another eco-friendly proposal, David saw potential. He approached me afterward, designer glasses perched on his nose, exuding the confidence that only old money could buy. Your integration of historical elements with modern sustainability is fascinating, he said, extending a manicured hand. Have you ever considered partnering with someone who could help scale your vision? At 32, I had already made a name for myself in sustainable architecture, but my small firm struggled to land the major projects that could truly showcase my ideas. David, with his connections and family name in real estate development, seemed like the perfect partner. If only I'd known then what that partnership would cost me. The early years of Foster and Reynolds Architects were everything I dreamed of. David's connections brought us high-profile clients, while my designs won us accolades. We grew from a team of 5 to 50 in just 3 years. Our office, once a modest studio in the Arts District, now occupied the entire 20th floor of a downtown high-rise, one I'd redesigned myself. Marcus, your attention to historical preservation while incorporating cutting-edge sustainability features is remarkable. Clara Martinez, the city's head of urban development, told me after we completed the renovation of the historic Grand Theater. It's rare to see someone balance progress with preservation so beautifully. That project had been particularly special to me. Instead of gutting the 1920s building like most developers wanted, I'd found ways to preserve its Art Deco charm while making it a model of energy efficiency. The solar panels were hidden seamlessly in the restored roof architecture, and the original marble lobby now concealed state-of-the-art thermal regulation systems. But while I focused on pushing architectural boundaries while respecting historical context, David became increasingly frustrated with what he called my conservative approach. We need to be bolder, more dramatic, he argued during one heated meeting. Clients want buildings that make headlines, not ones that blend in with their surroundings. What David didn't understand, or chose not to understand, was that true innovation didn't always mean glass towers scratching the sky. Sometimes it meant finding ways to honor the past while building for the future. My designs weren't conservative. They were considerate. I should have seen the signs earlier. The way David began excluding me from client meetings. How our newer projects started featuring more of his flashy aesthetic preferences. The subtle shifts in power dynamics during board meetings. Then came the announcement that would change everything. The city was planning a $500 million urban renewal project, the largest development initiative in our history, aimed at transforming the historic warehouse district into a modern, sustainable community hub. This was exactly the kind of project I'd been preparing for my entire career. While others saw decaying buildings, I saw potential for something revolutionary, a seamless blend of historic architecture and cutting-edge sustainability. For 3 months, I worked late into the night, developing plans that would preserve the district's industrial character while transforming it into a model of urban sustainability. The preliminary designs were unlike anything we'd done before. I'd found ways to turn the old warehouse walls into solar collectors, integrate urban farming into the historic water towers, and create a network of green spaces that would make the district carbon negative while maintaining its historic charm. But I never got to present those plans to the city. The morning of the initial proposal meeting, I arrived at the office to find David waiting with 2 security guards and our corporate lawyer. His designer glasses couldn't hide the cold calculation in his eyes. "Marcus," he said, his voice carrying across the empty office. "The board met last night. We've decided to take the firm in a new direction." I stood there, portfolio clutched in my hands, as he continued. "Your designs, while competent, are too conservative for where we need to go. The firm needs to evolve, and frankly, your attachment to historical preservation is holding us back." "The board?" I managed to say. "I'm a founding partner. There couldn't have been a board meeting without me." David's smile was all teeth. "Actually, if you check Section 7 of our partnership agreement, the one you signed when we restructured last year, you'll find that your voting rights were adjusted. You're out, Marcus. Security will help you pack your things." As I was escorted to my office, I could hear David on the phone, already rehearsing his pitch for the warehouse district project. He thought he had won, thought he had stolen not just my firm, but my vision. What he didn't know was that I had seen this coming. Not the exact moment, perhaps, but I had sensed the shift in the wind. That's why the plans in my portfolio weren't the real ones. The true designs, the ones that would revolutionize urban renewal, were safely hidden away, along with evidence of every project David had tried to take credit for over the years. As I packed my personal items under the watchful eyes of security, I thought about the hidden safe in my home office, containing plans that would make the warehouse district project the talk of the architectural world. David wanted bold. He had no idea what that word truly meant. I walked out of the building I'd helped design, past the sustainable features I'd carefully integrated into every floor. Tomorrow, when the city opened the project for bids, David would learn that true innovation doesn't always announce itself with glass and steel fanfare. Sometimes it whispers in the walls of buildings that have stood for 100 years, waiting for someone who knows how to make them sing again. And I was about to conduct a symphony that would change the face of our city forever. The security guard handed me a box of personal items as I reached the lobby. "Sorry about this, Mr. Foster," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, your renovation of this building is brilliant. The way you kept the old marble, but made it help cool the place. Genius." I smiled, thinking of the plans waiting in my safe. "Thank you, Mike. Sometimes the most revolutionary ideas are the ones you can't see at first glance." As I stepped out onto the street, my phone buzzed with a message from Clara Martinez. "Heard what happened. When you're ready to talk, I have some things you should know about the warehouse district project. Some requirements that aren't in the public brief." I tucked the phone away, smiling slightly. David may have taken my firm, but he had forgotten the first rule of architecture. The strength of a building isn't in its facade, but in its foundation. And I had spent 15 years building foundations in this city that went far deeper than he could imagine. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The morning after my forced exit from Foster & Reynolds, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the architectural awards we'd won over the years. My fingers traced the embossed letters of the Sustainable Design Excellence Medal, the one David had accepted on the firm's behalf, while I was too busy working on the warehouse district plans. A tap at my door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, recognizing Clara Martinez's distinctive knock. The city's head of urban development entered, carrying a thick folder and wearing an expression that meant business. "I brought coffee and inside information," she said, placing a cup on my desk. "Though I'm more interested in what's in that safe behind your Frank Lloyd Wright print." I raised an eyebrow. "How did you?" "Please, Marcus, I've been in urban development for 20 years. I know when someone's planning ahead. She settled into the chair across from me. David Reynolds just submitted Foster and Reynolds' bid for the warehouse project. Want to guess what his innovative design involves? Let me guess. Glass towers, floating gardens, and enough steel to build a battleship. Clara's laugh was sharp. Close. He's proposing to demolish 80% of the existing structures. Says it's the only way to achieve true modernization. I stood and walked to the right print, swinging it aside to reveal my walls safe. Then he clearly hasn't seen these. The plans I pulled out weren't just blueprints, they were a vision 15 years in the making. Every project I'd completed, every historical building I'd renovated, had been researched for this moment. I spread the drawings across my desk as Clara leaned forward, her eyes widening. Marcus, this is incredible. You found a way to preserve every historically significant building while exceeding the city's sustainability goals by 200%. I finished. Those old warehouses aren't obstacles to modernization. They're the key to it. I pulled out more documents, structural analyses, material studies, energy calculations. The brick walls of those warehouses, perfect thermal mass for passive heating and cooling. The old water towers, ideal for rainwater harvesting and vertical farming. The iron frameworks, ready-made support structures for solar arrays and wind energy systems. Clara studied the plans intently. This would cut construction costs by 40% compared to new construction. The Historical Preservation Committee would approve it instantly. But she hesitated. Foster and Reynolds owns your work. David will claim these are company property. I smiled, pulling out one final document. Check the dates on those drawings. I completed the core designs 3 years ago, before the last partnership agreement. I registered them with the Architectural Copyright Office under my personal name. David doesn't own these. I do. And the new designs he's claiming to have developed. Every innovation he's presented in the last year. I have dated proof they came from my original concepts. Which reminds me, I turned to my computer and pulled up a folder labeled Project Archives. For the past 2 years, I've documented every instance of David taking credit for my work. Emails where he claims my designs as his own. Meetings where he presented my innovations without crediting me. Even security footage from the office showing him taking files from my computer after hours. Clara whistled low. You've been preparing for this. I learned long ago that true architectural innovation isn't just about design. It's about foundation. David was so busy looking at flashy facades that he never bothered to check what I was building beneath the surface. Just then my phone buzzed. A message from Tom Jang, my former head of sustainable systems. David's in full panic mode. The sustainability metrics in his proposal don't add up, and the Historical Commission is asking questions he can't answer. Clara stood, gathering the plans carefully. The city's hosting a public forum on the warehouse project next week. All qualified architects can present alternative proposals. She paused at the door. The Historical Commission, Environmental Council, and Urban Planning Board will all be there, just in case you're interested. After she left, I spent hours refining my presentation. The plans were solid, but I needed more than just superior design to win. I needed to expose David's pattern of theft while presenting an alternative that was undeniably better. My phone kept buzzing with updates from former colleagues. David was scrambling, trying to justify his demolition-heavy approach. The Historical Commission was pushing back hard, and environmental groups were organizing protests against the destruction of the historic district. Late that night, as I reviewed the final details of my proposal, I received an unexpected email from David himself. "Marcus, perhaps we were hasty in our recent decisions. Your experience with historical preservation could be valuable for the warehouse project. Would you consider a consulting role?" David. I smiled, thinking of the presentation I was preparing. David wasn't offering an olive branch. He was trying to get legal access to my designs. What he didn't realize was that the biggest threat to his plans wasn't in my blueprints. It was in his own actions over the past year. The next morning, I had meetings with 3 different architectural firms, all interested in partnering on my warehouse district proposal. But I had something else in mind. "I'm not looking for a partner," I told them. "I'm looking for witnesses." Each firm had worked with Foster and Reynolds over the past year. Each had seen David present my designs as his own, and each had kept records, emails, meeting minutes, project documents, proving who the real innovator was. By week's end, I had assembled a coalition of the city's top architectural talents, all willing to testify about David's pattern of design theft. But more importantly, each brought unique expertise that would strengthen my warehouse district proposal. Sarah Chen from Green Park Solutions would oversee the vertical farming integration. Michael O'Brien's historical restoration firm would handle the preservation aspects, and Maria Rodriguez, whose sustainable energy company had worked on my past projects, would implement the renewable systems. Together, we spent the weekend refining the presentation, ensuring every detail was perfect. My original designs were already revolutionary. With their added expertise, they became undeniable. The night before the public forum, I received another message from David, this one less cordial. "Whatever you're planning, remember who has the resources to fight a legal battle. Don't do anything foolish." I thought about the thick folder of evidence in my safe, the testimonies from industry leaders, and the dated blueprints that proved every innovation he'd claimed was mine. David had resources, yes, but I had truth, and a design that would change our city forever. Tomorrow, at the public forum, David would learn what true architectural innovation looked like, and it wouldn't come with a glass facade or a steel frame. It would come with the weight of history, the power of sustainability, and the undeniable proof that the best designs don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper from within 100-year-old walls, waiting for someone who knows how to make them sing. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, looking out over the warehouse district. In the fading light, those old buildings stood like silent sentinels, their brick walls holding a century of stories. By this time tomorrow, they'd be holding the future too. The stage was set. The foundations were laid, and I was about to show David Reynolds what conservative design really meant. The City Hall auditorium buzzed with anticipation on the morning of the public forum. Developers, architects, preservationists, and community leaders filled every seat. I sat quietly in the back row, watching David Reynolds stride confidently to the stage for Foster and Reynolds' presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his designer glasses catching the spotlight. "Today I present a vision that will transform our warehouse district into a beacon of modern architecture." The massive screen behind him lit up with renderings of glass towers and elevated gardens, exactly what I'd expected. I glanced at Clara Martinez, who sat with the city council. She met my eyes briefly, her expression neutral, but her slight nod speaking volumes. "By removing these outdated structures," David continued, gesturing to photos of the historic warehouses, "we make way for true innovation. Our design will—" "Excuse me," an elderly woman in the front row interrupted. "Rose Thompson, head of the Historical Society." Are you suggesting the complete demolition of buildings that have stood for over a century? David's smile tightened. Sometimes progress requires bold choices, Mrs. Thompson. These buildings, while charming, cannot meet modern sustainability requirements without. Actually, another voice cut in, those buildings have excellent thermal properties. Michael O'Brien, my historical restoration partner, stood up. Their brick construction and existing framework could be integral to any sustainability solution. I watched David's confidence waver slightly as more experts in the audience began questioning his assumptions. The sustainability metrics in his proposal didn't add up. The construction costs seemed unnecessarily inflated. The energy efficiency projections appeared overly optimistic. Perhaps, David said, his voice strained, some elements could be preserved. We have consulted experts, like your former partner? Someone called out. The one who actually designed your last 3 innovative projects. The murmurs in the room grew louder. I could see David scanning the audience, finally spotting me in the back. His eyes narrowed. Marcus Foster's contributions to the firm were appreciated, he said carefully, but the innovations you're referring to were team efforts, developed under my leadership. That's not what the Copyright Office records show. Clara Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. She stood, holding up a folder. We've received some interesting documentation regarding the true authorship of Foster and Reynolds' recent designs. David's facade cracked. Those documents are company property. This is corporate espionage. Actually, I said, standing slowly, they're my personal work, registered before our last partnership agreement, just like the real warehouse district plans. The room fell silent as I walked toward the stage. David's face had lost its practiced charm, replaced by barely contained panic. What real plans? The city council chairman asked. I pulled out a USB drive. May I? David tried to block my path to the podium. This is irregular. Foster and Reynolds has the floor. Mr. Foster is a qualified architect with a registered proposal, Clara interjected. According to forum rules, he has the right to present. As I connected my drive to the presentation system, I smiled at David. You always said I was too conservative, too focused on preservation. Let me show you what real innovation looks like. The screen came alive with my designs. Not just blueprints, but a complete visualization of how the warehouse district could be transformed while preserving its soul. The challenge isn't how to replace these buildings, I began, but how to help them evolve. These aren't obstacles to progress. They're the foundation of it. For the next 30 minutes, I walked the audience through my vision. The old brick walls, reinforced and modified to serve as thermal batteries. The iron frameworks, repurposed to support advanced solar arrays. The water towers, transformed into vertical farming hubs. Every historical element preserved and enhanced with cutting-edge technology. This approach, I continued, pulling up the cost analysis, reduces construction costs by 40%, exceeds sustainability requirements by 200%, and preserves every historically significant structure. But more importantly, it creates something unique, a living bridge between our past and our future. The audience was transfixed. Even David had stopped trying to interrupt, staring at the projections with a mix of rage and realization. Of course, I added, some might wonder why these innovations weren't included in Foster and Reynolds' proposal, especially since similar concepts appeared in their recent projects. I clicked to the next slide, showing side-by-side comparisons of my original designs and David's claimed innovations. Fortunately, I've maintained detailed records of my work's development, and I'm not the only one. I gestured to the audience, where my coalition partners stood one by one. Sarah Chen detailed how my vertical farming concepts had been presented as David's work. Michael O'Brien confirmed my authorship of the historical preservation techniques. Maria Rodriguez verified my sustainable energy innovations. "This is absurd," David sputtered, but his protest sounded hollow even to him. "These designs belong to the firm." "Actually," Clara Martinez interrupted, "the city's legal department has reviewed Mr. Foster's documentation. The intellectual property rights are quite clear." She turned to the city council, as is the pattern of misappropriation. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Reynolds, in light of these revelations, Foster and Reynolds' bid for the warehouse project is suspended pending investigation. Mr. Foster, the council would like to schedule a detailed review of your proposal." David stormed off the stage, but I barely noticed. I was too busy answering questions from excited council members and community leaders. My coalition partners were already discussing implementation details. The Historical Society representatives were practically crying with joy. Hours later, as the auditorium emptied, Clara approached me. "Congratulations, though I suspect you knew how this would play out." I smiled, watching the sun set through the building's historic windows. In architecture, like in life, the strongest structures are the ones built on truth. David never understood that. Over the next year, the warehouse district transformation became a model for sustainable urban renewal worldwide. The project won numerous awards, but more importantly, it proved that progress doesn't have to erase history. Foster Sustainable Design, my new firm, quickly became known for innovative preservation projects. David Reynolds resigned from the company he tried to steal, his reputation in shambles after multiple clients came forward with similar stories of theft and deception. The old Foster and Reynolds building was eventually sold. The new owners hired my firm to redesign it. A delicious irony. We preserved its historical elements while making it one of the most sustainable structures in the city. Sometimes, late at night, I walk through the warehouse district, now a vibrant community hub. The old buildings stand proud, their brick walls housing cutting-edge technology, their historic character enhanced rather than erased. Solar arrays gleam on restored iron frameworks, and the transformed water towers burst with vertical gardens. It's a symphony of old and new, proof that true innovation doesn't always mean tearing down the past. Sometimes it means building on it, strengthening it, helping it evolve. Recently, a young architect interviewed me for a professional journal. "Your designs are revolutionary," she said, "but they're so subtle. How do you balance innovation with preservation so perfectly?" I thought about David, about his obsession with flash over substance, and smiled. "The best designs don't need to shout," I told her. "They just need to work." And sometimes, the most revolutionary ideas are the ones that respect what came before. As I left the interview, my phone buzzed with a message from Clara. The city was planning an even bigger renewal project, this time focusing on the historic downtown district. The message ended with a question. "Ready to make history again?" I looked up at the warehouse district's restored water tower, now a gleaming beacon of sustainable urban design, and smiled. In architecture, as in revenge, the best plans aren't about destruction. They're about transformation, about taking what exists and making it better, stronger, more than anyone thought possible. David had called my designs conservative because he could only see the surface. He never understood that true innovation often lies in the foundations, in the careful integration of past and future, in the quiet strength of buildings that have stood for 100 years, and will now stand for 100 more. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Clara. Planning meeting tomorrow. Bring those revolutionary conservative designs of yours. I texted back a quick reply. Some people build glass towers that reach for the sky. I prefer to build bridges between yesterday and tomorrow. After all, that's what real architects do. We don't just design buildings. We design futures that honor the past. And sometimes, if we're very careful and very lucky, we get to prove that the best way to move forward isn't always to tear everything down. Sometimes it's about seeing the strength in what already stands and helping it rise to new heights. David never understood that. But then again, he never really understood architecture at all.